I don't think you can validate an idea before you actually try it. You can have a rough idea and you can make an informed decision, but I think realistically, you can tilt the odds from like, maybe it's 10% likely you'll make it, so like maybe it's 20% likely, but you're going to learn by being just much quicker at shipping things. It's not about polish and pixel perfection. It's like, no, you just get something out that provides basic functionality to solve your problem, and then make sure you have some ability to learn from it. Like talk to users, look at like what's getting used.
Hey, this is Brian, and you're listening to Jamstack Radio, a bi-weekly series where we discuss modern web development with maintainers, founders, and developers. Jamstack Radio is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. For more information, visit heavybit.com. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, or if you'd like to suggest a topic, find us on Twitter at Jamstack Radio. Welcome to another installment of Jamstack Radio. On the line, we've got James Hawkins.
Hey, Brian. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And you're calling from the UK somewhere?
Yes, I'm calling from a village near Cambridge, which is a little bit north of London. Yeah, it's dark and cold here.
Okay, yes. I've never been there, but I had a coworker at GitHub. They were based in Cambridge. And besides that, we won't talk about my coworker in Cambridge, but we do want to talk about you and find out what you do. So can you explain what's your current focus and sort of how you got there?
Sure. So I'm the CEO and the co-founder at PostHog. We are an open source product operating system. Basically, we build the products that make your product more successful. So we have tons of different products inside our platform, things that help you measure your performance, product analytics, things that help you diagnose it, like session recording or writing SQL, and things that help you release changes like experimentation and feature flags to kind of iterate and improve stuff over time.
Very cool. Yeah. And I'd mentioned before he record, I'm a PostHog customer actually, because we are actually paying for the platform. And so far I have enjoyed it. I've realized very recently, I didn't really go very deep in how we're using it. So been doubling down on some documentation, some videos, and learning how to use the product properly. But can you kind of explain like what does PostHog offer? Like sort of features that you had mentioned earlier?
Sure. So it's a little bit like, well, I guess the first thing is we give you a snippet, a JavaScript snippet, which lets you track all of the kind of front-end events that are happening inside your application. And we provide like SDKs for your backend. We can then visualize these over time. So you can kind of see like which features are being used, how often they're being used, who's using them, are they coming back or not? What are my conversion rates? What are my activation rates? Similar to kind of like Amplitude, Mixpanel, or Heap are kind of the triumvirate that we're competing with there. The second product is session recording. So we kind of give you live video replays of your users using your stuff. This is kind of useful if you're trying to, say, for example, you want to improve your activation rate in your product. The cool thing about PostHog is because they're in the same place, you can kind of be like, okay, here are the people that didn't activate, that just like signed up and then just like disappeared for whatever reason. We can just show you the video clips of what they actually did. And usually it's ultra depressing to watch. Like you'll kind of be like, if you watch 30 of them, you'll come up with like, you'll be embarrassed 30 times over and then go back and ship something to improve it.
Oh, I look forward to this.
And then the last step is we provide kind of feature flags and experimentation. So what we want there is now you've got some idea of what's going wrong. We want you to be able to release change and test the impact of the change. This gets like more important as you get larger. Like once you're kind of post product market fit, teams will do conversion rate optimization for the rest of their lives. It's a bit of a trend where we're seeing things like companies that would have been spending like $1 million a month, whatever, on online ads are now starting to think of kind of growth engineering as channel spend, where it's like, actually, if we hire like 3 growth engineers, we're going to spend whatever, like $500K or $600K or something. But that is a much more effective place to invest money, like getting these rates higher than it is to spend that in like a one-off like purchase of growth from an online ad network. So we do that, and then you go at step 1. Like, okay, cool, now measuring performance again. So we try and get you through that sort of iterative product development kind of flow.
Yeah. And I feel silly for not even like deep diving and like starting to I didn't know, but I knew about session recordings. I haven't done this yet, but at the current issue we have right now with our product is that people are signing up. We have no problem getting people to the funnel or in the funnel and even clicking the login button. But like we don't actually have any insights what happens after they log in. And that's on us. Like we're users of PostHog, but it sounds like I could probably set something up to say, okay, you've logged in. How many people have clicked create a new dashboard? Because that's our sort of money maker is like create a dashboard, get data, and insights, and then come back like next week.
Yep.
So like we are tracking weekly actives. So that's like our metric that we share with updates, with investors, and with the team of how well we're doing. But there seems like there's so much more we could be doing with that, which you had mentioned in passing feature flags. I didn't even know that was a feature as well. Is this like feature flags in a very similar way of like Launch Darkly, or I guess Launch Darkly is the only one I can think of that is a product that does feature flagging?
It's very similar. And again, if you have like ultra deep needs and like you're an enterprise scale thing and you need like every single feature under the sun, like go with them. But we're going to give you like all the stuff you're realistically going to use. And then it's all nicely integrated. And you've got like one dependency rather than multiple. There's no integration between all these different tools. And so we kind of believe in consolidating stuff and kind of removing the need for integration work.
Yeah.
Someone at your stage though, when someone's kind of saying like, okay, we've got like a very basic handle on our metrics like that, we just normally would encourage you to look at people. I think a lot of people focus on sign up, but activation is kind of the real product challenge, like making sure that they're getting value from the product, because that causes then like your WAU number to rise. So, and usually it would be like, okay, well, think of like what represents actual value to one of your users where they've solved a problem. And then like what percent are converting through to that, check if that cohort corresponds to more retention. And then like if you can't find anything that corresponds to retention, then you have a problem. Or if you do, then it's great. Now you need to like figure out how to get more people to like do that thing. Easier said than done.
Yeah. I was part of so I worked at GitHub, and actually on Heavybit on the sort of content arm where they have all the content of previous speaking engagements and conferences. I spoke on onboarding.
Yeah.
And I spoke specifically on onboarding for the company I worked for previously, which is Netlify, but also at GitHub. And at the time I did that talk, GitHub had an issue with onboarding where people didn't know what to use GitHub with. Like if you know what Git is and you went through a course or you went to university, someone told you to use GitHub, like you're fine.
Yeah.
But when you're like a technical designer or a product manager or a self-taught programmer, you don't know what to do with GitHub. And so GitHub spent a lot of time working on an onboarding flow. So I bring this up because I was at GitHub for 4.5 years, and it was like only halfway through we actually started looking at those retention numbers at a company level. So like this is when I took notice, and it was how many times did people come back? Like did someone come back to the platform? So like GitHub was focused on monthly actives, and did they come back to the platform twice and they do something besides just push code?
Yep.
So like, did you write a comment or did you go look at another repo? And those were like the activation points. So like we're very similar with open source, which is the project I'm working on. But creating a dashboard is like, that is the step so that you have something that's activated. And then we could do notifications around or get you back on the platform based on the dashboard you created. So it sounds like PostHog is exactly what we need today because we don't have a lot of features. And it sounds like Brandon, if you're listening, who's one of our lead engineers, I will be DMing you tonight with some documentation, and we're going to work on this.
Cool. Yeah, we're kind of again like we're not the be all and end all. Like we still got more products. We want to build into the platform. Like we have more to do. I think for earlier stage companies, we have more to build. Like for example. I think we could still do a better job of incorporating qualitative feedback into what's going on. And session recording is a form of that, but also just what people are telling you.
Yeah.
Like I'd love us to have like user notes in there and that sort of thing, which we'll get to at some point. At the moment, we're helping people who are in like an optimization cycle. It's like our best fit. But I'm kind of secretly hoping that we can kind of go down market at some point in terms of what we're building. Again, we'll find out once we get bigger still, but we're kind of at the point where we've just had like an awful lot of growth by focusing on like primarily kind of Series B, C, D kind of companies. But we get a ton of usage from people who aren't that big yet because they still need the basics of like how many users do I have, which bits they're using, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so our weekly actives are around 200. We've been around for about 6 months, live with the product 2 months.
Yeah.
So like we're seeing that number go up and to the right. Like it looks like a hockey stick, but it's again, we started from 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Like having this groundwork of being able to see like what we did at the point of launch is something that I think I missed out on when I was at early stage startups like Netlify. Like we didn't have all this data. We had Google Analytics and that was about it. And I think the majority of us on the team, we didn't know how to use Google Analytics. It was like a thing that existed. And I'm curious, like in your trajectory, because I heard before we hit started the call, like you started in YC in 2020.
Yep.
And I do remember the GDPR stuff. Like, did you get an influx of users from the sort of Google Analytics not being GDPR compliant and all this other stuff?
Well, we kind of hit a home run there with kind of for fun, we built isGoogleAnalyticsIllegal.com. It's like kind of like a one-day project to throw this website out there. I'm not joking insofar as we spent about 8 hours on this website, and we have like a scrolling marquee with like red text in all caps and stuff. And like Ursula, I can't pronounce the name correctly, Ursula something or something, president of the EU, who introduced this, gives you like a thumbs up if you're in a country where you can use it with its default settings legally. But we launched it. People took it deadly seriously. And we got like, we had 100,000 visitors to that website in like a day.
Wow.
We got more signups from launching that freaking website than we did when we actually launched our product on Hacker News, and it was on the front page.
Really?
Yeah, we had an incredible number. So that worked quite well. But the reality is we can replace a lot of the basic functionality of GA, but like we're not really like, I would differentiate between kind of web analytics and product analytics, sort of like you were touching on in your earlier work. Our mission is to increase the number of successful products in the world.
Yeah.
So we're very focused on like software teams shipping what they would consider a product versus like, we're not very focused on like marketing attribution, or like we don't have many integrations with like your online ad spend or anything like that at this point. So
okay, so like things like doing referral links and stuff like that, that's not something PostHog's going to be managing?
Yeah, they're like hacky workarounds, but if you're sophisticated, then not for a bit. Like we will at some stage build more pre-built integrations with these sorts of things, but and we do things like UTM tracking and segmentation, but our primary users are what we would call product engineers. So basically technical people that talk to users.
Yeah.
You know, kind of sometimes they're a technical product manager, like product manager who can code, and more often than not, it's I'm a software engineer, but I'm very broad and I'm trying to incorporate user feedback the best I can. We're kind of geared around that sort of team. We're not as geared around like, I'm a product manager, I write out issues and the roadmap and I build tickets and then the team follow my instructions. Like that kind of team, we're just not, we don't build for that kind of product management tool. So we're trying to help engineers be better at product, more so than trying to solve the needs of a non-technical product manager.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, that's the space I operate in. Like technical founder can ship code and be dangerous, but also need to build a product that people want to use. That's what attracted me to PostHog, but also what attracted me to PostHog was the open source angle. Because you can sort of self-host PostHog. I actually, surprisingly, I didn't go that route first because it was so easy to set up and just log in. And we had such a low usage. And I'm like, I'm just going to sign up, use the hosted version, swipe the credit card. I honestly don't even know what I'm paying per month, which is
probably nothing.
Yeah. But it just worked, and we were able to. For years, I had bootstrapped open source, and I always wanted to know like what happened after sign up. And PostHog, before I even went full time, like working on this, I added PostHog because I just wanted to get an idea, like, is there traction? Like, is this enough for me to like quit my job and work on? And to my surprise, the answer was yes. We did have some traction, and we did have some repeat users. So that's what like validated me. Like one of the pieces of validation to go do this full time. But the open source, I'm curious why open source? Like why is there even a self-hosted version too as well?
First of all, I'm glad we helped you quit your job. I hope we're right. I think on why open source. So my co-founder and I pivoted a whole bunch of times. So PostHog is like our sixth weird and wonderful idea that we thought we'd work on. And every single time we...
Are you able to mention a couple of the previous ideas?
Yeah.
Or the ones that correlated with this?
Yeah, so I go into it. Like we started off, I'm basically a developer who's not very good at development, so I had to do other stuff. And I basically wound up as the VP of sales at an enterprise software company, like doing large contracts, like several $1 million a year. Yeah, and the company got kind of big. Like we're not huge, but like we went from like 1 million to 10 to 20 million kind of run rate. And I was like, man, this CRM we've got is annoying. Because like one of the things that used to annoy me about sales is you have all this pipeline, and like 95% of it's never going to close. And yet it's still there in your CRM, and it's just wasted time. Like you're kind of reporting on it and like doing stuff and chasing people up, but no one's responding. And like my point of view is I want to automatically manage territory. So if a deal's not moving, I bet we can just model the statistical probability that it doesn't close, and then just get rid of it and put a new deal into that person's territory. So we built this like super complex modeling tool that would automatically manage people's sales territory. I got 15 potential customers who all said they'd do it, like other VPs of sales. And not a single one even clicked the link. So like sign in the first place. Our MVP should have literally just been like a link to a page that just had like Rickroll on it kind of thing. So so that was like the first one. Then we built like a Monopoly or random stuff. One of the other ones that was kind of cool was we built a technical debt survey tool. It's like after all your pull requesting, just mentioned it because you were at GitHub, but it would put a check into every pull request being like, our hypothesis was developers kind of know where technical debt is, but they can't really justify fixing it because there's no way to kind of report on why they should do that to companies that are militantly trying to get like stuff out the door. So if we can weigh up the cost, then great. So it would just ask you, how long did you waste on like this technical debt? Where was it? We would then connect to all the files that you touched, and we'd visualize where all the debt was in the code base and the actual rough cost of it. But again, got lots of users, but we didn't solve the problem. Reports were generated and everyone ignored them. So we found we got usage, but no money in that case. It was super hard. I was putting all these enterprise sales tricks out of my book to get deals for like a couple of bucks a month per user. So we moved on. My co-founder and I also realized we don't know what we're doing. This technical debt is not something that we've solved before in a work setting, really. We've just sort of seen the problems it causes. So we also weren't willing to restart the solution from scratch and build something fresh. And we got so frustrated at product analytics every time we set up on these new ideas as quite technical people. We just wanted to build product analytics, but gear it towards developers. Like we wanted to access the underlying data. We wanted APIs. We want to self-host, so we wouldn't lose half our data. For a start, you lose half your data to ad blockers if you're building a dev tool. But then the second thing was it just kind of felt weird to send all of our users' information to some random third party because it's kind of personal data that you're tracking in product analytics. So we kind of want to give, whilst we aren't privacy fanatics, we wanted to give users the ability to have complete control and like to have an escape valve. And your situation is extremely typical. More than 90% of users that show up know you can self-host. But the fraction adopting self-hosted is probably like 10, 15% at the moment.
Okay, that's surprising. Yeah.
But they come because they've heard of it, because it's like, this is like clear. But just the fact you can self-host and you give like the ability to do that gives you trust. And especially when you combine it with being like open source too. And so we're sort of, and you can host PostHog in the EU, you can do a bunch of other stuff. So it's given us this like strong, like we're very much tied to engineering as a persona. Whereas the other tools are more product managery. And it's like if something's open source, it's just like added plus from a developer's perspective, basically.
Yeah, and I would say like the allure for the self-hosting is that so the idea was like, oh, we don't have to pay any money, so we're going to self-host and like pay our hosting fees. But then in reality, it's like we're so small, we're just getting started. It's actually better to do a hosted version and then switch to self-hosted. Like if we have some issue or if we get to some place where our burn's too high or something like that, so we'll spin up like some laptop that runs the self-hosted version. But it turns out like we're like the amount of data because we don't have masses of users going through our platform. It's getting us good data. It works. Like we don't have to think about it. And the credit card's there in case it needs to unlock whatever the next tier is.
Yeah, it's probably cheaper to use it in cloud. Like we don't try and make money off people who are at your stage. Like we're trying to make money off people who like our main target is Series B onwards, but basically people have raised like a couple of $1 million plus. So if you self-host, it costs you money to self-host, and in cloud, it's literally free. So it's kind of, again, because we wanted to avoid, like, why do we bother providing it? And the reality is if we don't have, like, a small free offering, well, it's actually kind of generous, like 1 million events per month tracked. But if we don't provide that, we just end up with like, lots of people trying to self-host, which brings, like, random issues and complexity that then we end up ultimately helping people with. So, and we want them to have a good time. Like, they have a better user experience. We just host it for them, so we should just do that. So we started off being kind of, we should just offer self-hosting. Surely no one's going to use PostHog if it's in cloud, because like everyone's going to like, there's a load of like analytics providers. So we just focused on self-hosting. And then one day we kind of randomly just set up a cloud offering to get signal because we felt that we were getting asked for it quite a bit. And then we didn't think too much more. We just let users kind of like set up and use it. And we didn't even build a payment flow. It was completely free for literally unlimited usage because we just thought, well, no one's going to bother, like whatever. And then one day we kind of checked and we're actually getting like a ton of usage in cloud, and those users have really good retention. So then we started putting payment flow in to stop abuse, and then we thought through our payment structure last year, and now lo and behold, cloud is 90% of our revenue.
Wow, that's fascinating.
What sort of happened was self-hosting gave us a niche to get initial traction, and then now the product can hold its own in cloud much more successfully because we've incorporated all these adjacent products, the product analytics. It gave us the stepping stone we needed to then start competing head on with what would have been impossible competitors when we were much smaller.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Now that I'm on the other end of it, it all makes sense. But as like, what attracted me to it is like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to use cloud. Okay, cloud works for me. Like, what a great funnel. And I guess also what a great product to also build a product. Because at GitHub, we built GitHub using GitHub. So it was like one of those like snake eating its own tail. And I imagine PostHog because you're building the product, you now have insights of like, hey, oh wow, 90% of our customers are clicking the cloud button versus the self-hosted. Like that's insightful. So it's like almost by the time we hit Series B, like PostHog is going to be a pretty nice solution for us. And like I'm happy that we have it ingrained in our product now because we have it. Some of our features do have some events that I haven't started segmenting yet. But again, like I'd say anybody listening, if you're starting a new project, an indie, side project or a startup, start early with PostHog because it's a nice thing to have this data for months while you're still sort of ideation and trying to figure out what the product market fit is and having something to sort of stand on because every product I've made prior has not been successful. This is the most successful product I've had so far. I attribute some of that to PostHog, but I also attribute that to I actually started taking it seriously. So.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a shots on goal thing, all this startup malarkey.
Very true. Yeah, very very timely with the...
Well, you basically have to ship and learn as fast as possible, and I think that's all you can really do in the early stages.
Yeah, and sorry, I was just going to make a World Cup analogy because I've been watching a lot of soccer lately, and it really comes down to like the U.S. team, like awful. Like I just don't see them like even competing at that level the way they were playing. But watching like teams like Argentina, it is about shots on goal for them. So like you gotta try a bunch of things and then go back in the huddle and be like, oh, what worked? What didn't work? Who should be on the field and who should not be on the field? Like those are all questions you have to ask while building a product. And anyway, I don't know. I butchered that anecdote.
Yeah, I think it's there's a good talk by Dalton Caldwell on this, which is you make your own luck.
Yes,
which is the same sort of concept. And I think like in terms of validation, I don't think you can validate an idea before you actually try it. You can have a rough idea and you can make an informed decision, but I think realistically you maybe have like you can tilt the odds from like maybe it's 10% likely you'll make it to like maybe it's 20% likely, but you're going to learn by being just much quicker at shipping things. It's partly why we try and work with more engineering-led kind of teams where it's not about polish and pixel perfection. It's like, no, you just get something out that provides the basic functionality to solve your problem, and then make sure you have some ability to learn from it. Like talk to users, look at like what's getting used or whatever, and fail quickly if you're going to have a screw up. Don't spend ages by like massively over designing or over engineering something or doing a ridiculous amount of analysis, or whatever. But yeah, it's something we saw a lot. I think when we pivoted, like we were quite quick. I think it was kind of like a month average per startup. Whereas I don't know, some people do manage it the way around. Like Airbnb, I think is a classic example of people who are willing to drag themselves over like numerous horrible, like very difficult situations for years until they got like the same concept working.
Yeah.
But most people, for like mere mortals, I think just like work out if it's a game you can roughly compete in and then get good at that game. So like try out hockey, like try out rock climbing, play a little bit of football, like get a rough idea which one you're better at, and then like get really good at that one thing.
Yeah, that's good insight too as well. And Figma is another one that I honestly don't know early Figma, how many times they pivoted or if they did pivot. But I do know Figma from like mid 2010s, like what the product looked like then and what it is today. Miles different, and but kind of the same essence. So at least one success story is if you can get the first 5 years across the board, you'll figure out the next 5 years and then hopefully get bought by Adobe for $20 billion.
That would be nice.
Yeah, so we hit most of the talking points I wanted to talk about. We didn't talk about this sort of the maintenance of open source and like building a product and a business on top of an open source project. Have you found any sort of difficulty in open source and having an open source project while also sort of driving the business and revenue?
Yes, I think open source makes it easier it's easier to build something that people use. I think because people are kind of willing to work with, and like they can literally work with an open source product to make it fit actually what their use cases are in the first place, which we saw happening in our early days. You would kind of get, I don't know if you've ever read the book Crossing the Chasm.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this simplistic concept, right, of like how willing someone is to adopt technology varies. So some people are, the most extreme versions, they want to adopt new and broken technologies kind of because it's fun to use them. And then as you go across the curve, it gets into kind of like people who are like a little bit tech forward, like early adopters, all the way through to kind of like laggards, like conservatives and laggards. And I think with open source, the area under that curve, like how many people there are, is massive in the like early adopter phase. You'll get people who use stuff that's like basically broken because they kind of want it to work. It's a community effort. It's got a different kind of feel.
Yeah.
So it's sort of easy to get, if you can't make something open source get any traction whatsoever, like definitely no one cares about that thing, which again is a good learning. If they do care and like they're using it and stuff, the challenge is it's more complicated to monetize an open source product. There are like, it's becoming kind of normal now. Like the generic approaches are open core, where you provide extra functionality that's paid. Like GitLab is probably a good example of that. The other version is cloud, where like you host it for your users and you charge money for that. And then the third, which we're kind of following, is we do both. So you can pay to upgrade features, or you can use our cloud version that just has all our features in it anyway. That's partly because we felt that it would be self-hosting would be where we make a lot of money, because it were differentiated, and it wound up cloud worked well. So now we just have this like cloud product that's got more stuff in it, but it also means you don't have stress about there's some quite interesting stuff around competition with like AWS hosting open source projects and monetizing them, effectively providing the paid cloud version. But if you've got extra functionality in your cloud version, because you have open core, you can kind of not worry about it. So there are some like cool, like more niche reasons why I think that setup of doing both works, but it does mean a lot of, basically the fundamental problem is it's more complicated and you have like more to build than just like SaaS. You have to worry about the community, the documentation, but those are all part of your moat once it gets going.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's something we actually going to open source our repo on Monday, and everything else we've done so far has been open source. We haven't open sourced our latest product because we just wanted to be very focused on whatever we're going to ship, and not like be comfortable with pivoting if we had to without having an audience watching us doing it. But now that we're comfortable with what we have, open source on Monday, definitely check it out. open/insights is the product. And with that being said, I appreciate you talking to PostHog, and I think this was really insightful. Like as a customer, I feel like I learned so much more about the product, and I definitely am excited to go do a more deep dive session on setting up things like the feature flags. Like again, like we have one feature, we just want to try it out. We want to basically segment that and then see what people are clicking on. That it's right in our wheelhouse. So like, seems like we're a good persona for at least the cloud tier as we're ramping up, and hopefully when we become a unicorn, we'll continue to pay PostHog and make you a decacorn at that point.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Like, yeah, it's fun. We grow when our customers grow and do well, and then usually we're like giving us money is the least of their concerns.
Exactly. Cool. So speaking of least concerns, I want to move us to jam picks. So these things are what we're jamming on. Could be music, food, technology related. And if you don't mind, I'll go first. I've got a couple picks because I mentioned we're going to do a launch on Monday. So by the time this comes out, check out opensauce.pizza, which is the URL. And I've been working on the landing page, and two tools that I've been really, actually three, honestly, that I've been really, really happy with while shipping this landing page is one, Stripe checkout. I actually integrated Stripe years ago for Netlify, and it was a lot harder. You had to like pass around tokens, read a lot of documentation. Now you can do Stripe checkout, which is like the sort of hosted version of Stripe, where you just like go to another URL, set up payments, and then you can integrate it in your platform later down the road. So like we just pulled the ripcord. It's going to use Stripe checkout, and then we'll figure out the rest later. And I've seen a lot of startups do the same thing as well, which is like it's such a nice experience to be able to say, okay, payments work. They don't have to break every other week or anything like that. The other one is we have a CMS, which is Sanity, Sanity.io, which has been a guest on this podcast and also a Heavybit company. So definitely check them out. We've been like playing around with copy like crazy, like trying to figure out like what is the story we're trying to tell. And instead of pull up another PR and deploy and go back to production or staging, we can actually just change the copy on the fly. So Sanity, it's like it's in the name. It keeps my sanity for being able to like, I think I took a period out of one line in our above the fold copy. And then the other one, I changed like a bit of copy. So like, I'm looking forward to do A/B testing in the future. But for now, to make a quick copy change, I just log into our Sanity hosted version and just change some copy and I'm good to go. One more pick is ChatGPT. So OpenAI just shipped another product, which is ChatGPT. Wow, that's hard to say. Where you just ask it questions and they give you like a conversational answer. And people have been using this for like getting the right code or getting to answer questions or set up like abstracts for conference talks. I've actually been using it for our copy on our website because I'm like, oh, how would you explain such and such in a way that's like useful and like approaches enterprise? And they'll give you like, it's kind of like word soup, but at least you get some like different approach to like my normal writing style. And I found it extremely useful. for doing some copy edits on the site in specific places. So like our features, like how do you explain a feature that does X, Y, and Z? It's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And here's some like, and can you make it more expressive? Oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And like, here's like a beautiful, elegant way to put it. And could you give me an analogy to apply with the feature? Oh yeah, here's an analogy of how you would apply. Yeah. So anyway, it's a very fascinating product that OpenAI shipped, and highly recommend if you're trying to write a lot of copy, ask it some questions and maybe it'll unblock you a little bit.
Cool. And do you want me to do the same, Brian? Or
yeah. You've got any picks, any things you're jamming on as of recent?
Yeah. So one is called Focus. It's a CRM for product-led companies. So like one of the challenges we've had is we're completely inbound. So we don't do any outbound sales. Everything kind of comes through the like open source repo. And people like yourself, like they self-cert and start using our stuff and then they get a hold of us. But like that's not how like Salesforce or HubSpot are built. Like they're kind of designed around like SDRs, booking meetings and stuff. And we had no end problems trying to figure out which users to talk to. So it lets you kind of prioritize, like, okay, these users are using it the most intensively. We've got like more data on that. We kind of know what size companies they're in and stuff. They're in our ideal customer profile. So we can kind of go, okay, let's put in, when you have a ton of signups, you're like, okay, great, we can like prioritize this handful and try and go really, really deep there and set up like Slack channels or whatever with them. So they've got like some line of communications. They're multi-set, so we can help them activate, for example. It's definitely one.
What was the name of that?
Focus, Pocus.
Okay.
There's like a bunch of them appearing. There's some other cool ones, like Podgeo Labs is another one. But I think there's a whole wave of like very cool, more kind of product-led CRMs for companies that do self-serve. But we spent a long time like trying to pick and choose which one to go with. And like there's just not yet a standard in that space, I think. Yeah, I think the second one is like eclectic uses of GitHub. Like where our whole company runs through it. Like we use it as I guess like GitHub as a content management system. So we use it for like all of our blog content, and it's superb for pushing up. Like if you care about quality of content, it's kind of you can get line by line. You can have like threaded conversations about stuff. You have the whole history or whatever. I think it's brilliant for doing it. And like our marketing people are like, oh, we kind of want to implement like something that feels like a bit less technical. But instead we've been like, no, we should just help you. Kind of to your point about GitHub, yeah. But we should just help you use GitHub because then you'll be really good at this stuff. And now it's amazing, sort of thing. I'm going to stick with two for now. Those are the two most recently, I think, that have stood out to me.
Yeah, coming from a GitHub employee who uses GitHub for everything, I'm right there with you on using it as a CMS. I do a lot of live streaming, so like I have I hand-built CMS through my GitHub issues on what I'm streaming next.
Yeah.
And then like BW Live, like all my posts on my website are GitHub issues.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is like the GitHub issues have comments already embedded.
Yeah.
So if you want to write a comment on something I posted, it's just adding a comment on my issue.
Yeah, it's like directly connected. And it kind of means you can, it's just cooler because then you can work in the open as well. So you can sort of like random people on the internet, I can send half finished work to, like people can contribute in a way that's like fiddlier.
Yeah.
You have all the same rules you'd have if you're merging code into your code base. You have control over it at the same time. Yeah, we do our whole company through it. It's definitely like, it is the company that we get probably the most value from out of all of the vendors that we have. Because like we do like our whole handbook, all our instruction manual, like everything's captured as issues. All our meetings are run as GitHub issues.
Yeah.
Too. So like our exec meetings, all of our like small teams have like retrospective on last week, what the plan is for next week. And then you can like seamlessly connect in. Like marketing team could be like #103 or whatever to like link up to a pull request for content, or the developers can do the same with like.
Is all your stuff open source as well? Like kind of like a GitLab where all their meetings are searchable in their GitHub repo?
Yeah, so the vast majority. Some things aren't, like if it's mentioning specific customers or companies, like if we're having issues or something, it won't be. But yeah, the vast majority is that. Like you can even see how much money we pay people when we choose to like how we fire people, and you can suggest changes too. We've actually had more contributors to our website because of we have this public handbook. I think we've got like 190 contributors to it or something. It's actually higher than our product. It's so frequent that we get people like kind of interested in how we work, and then they'll suggest changes and stuff, which is pretty cool. And other times people are just fanatical about grammar. And they'll just fix like tons of typos. You're like, oh, there's typos in like 90 pages of this website. And then you have to go through and check it all. But
amazing. Yeah, I mean, that is one of the benefits. You do have eyes to help catch some stuff like that, or even have like questions and feedback, where I know there's a lot of startups around just getting feedback from your users and customers. And I imagine with PostHog, probably still challenging to get feedback from customer and user, but not as challenging on closed source companies that you have to send an email as opposed to maybe opening a discussion or an issue.
Yeah, it's challenging but different. It's like it's harder to, the mentality shift actually we found really hard going from closed source to open source, where in closed source you're like, will anyone talk to us, please? And then in open source you're like, there's a lot of people talking to us. We can't do all of the things.
Yeah.
So the reality there is it gets very important to focus on your ideal customer profile and have a theory about who you're actually trying to build for, because you're going to get super random usage. Like, for example, a chain of pizza restaurants in Ukraine use PostHog, as does like defense companies, as do Series C startups, as do like crypto wallets. Like it's everywhere. And it kind of, you need some working view of like, okay, but who do we prioritize out of all of these random issues and feedback requests we get versus, if my mom's not giving me any more feedback because she's bored of taking these requests from me when you're tiny.
Amazing. Well, James, I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed just sort of getting to know you and the sort of trajectory of where PostHog came from and where it's at now. Definitely encourage everyone, check out PostHog if you don't have a solution right now for managing insights on retention on users, but also where they're coming from. Like, definitely a great product. Check it out. The docs are great. The handbook is also amazing.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, and listeners, keep spreading the jam. That's all we have time for today. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, or if you'd like to suggest a topic, find us on Twitter at Jamstack Radio. This show is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. To learn more about Heavybit, visit heavybit.com.